What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. I want to have a little look at EFC72 and all the chaos that happened there. Must be said, it was a great night of fights in the end. Unfortunately, there was a couple of negative incidents that happened leading up to the fight. First of which was Shana Power and Power Number being pulled from that card. Basically, from what I understand, is the doctor that was at Shana Power's last cut that actually eventually pulled the plug on the cut. Basically said that he hadn't cleared her to cut drastic amounts of weight. He wasn't happy with her going below 57, I think it was, but he agreed to let her go to 59 in that last week. And so that was handed over to the promotion. The promotion then contacted Power Numbers team, saying, look, would they take the fight at 59? She obviously declined, and her team made a decision to decline. And for me, that was quite understandable, to make your debut as a professional on such a big show against such a high-profile opponent is already such a tall order, especially for a young fighter, looking to make inroads in their career. To have to now deal with last-minute weight changes and really a change of weight class is quite a tall order. I feel she was scrutinized quite unjustly. She obviously made a decision for her career and didn't think it was a good decision for her. Her and her team obviously backed themselves and said, look, we can't take that fight at a higher weight. We've already got down to 55. To try get back up to 59 in the last couple of days was going to be quite a hard task for them. And yeah, man, sometimes you got to make decisions for your career, and I think that's what she and her team did, and props to them for that. The second major incident was Luke Michaels versus Arman Skeepers getting pulled on weigh-in day, which is always sad. It's never something you want to see. Unfortunately, it does happen. I've never seen it to that drastic measure. And I think the reality of the situation is very simple. Arman Skeepers missed weight by 9.6 kilos, and that's the reality of the situation. Regardless of what happened in between and before that with him and his team, you as a professional MMA fighter know on Friday before fight day, you have to be at your weigh-ins at a certain time, and you have to weigh in at that time, and what you hit the scale at is what you weigh in, and that's pretty easy. He came in at about 86 kilos or something crazy like that. He was 9 point something kilos overweight. I know his team got quite vocal online saying they had complications during the weight cut and whatever, and I do understand that, and it's never nice to see complicated weight cuts, but I honestly feel that they had literally bitten off more than they could chew. They tried to cut drastic amounts of weight at the last minute. They were extremely unprofessional in handling that situation. They should have given an official statement as to what exactly happened, instead of a lot of people trying to jump in and give their part. At the end of the day, he missed weight by an embarrassingly massive margin, and that's the crux of the situation. So Luke Michaels didn't get his fight. Both guys would have had a wasted camp. All the time, energy, money put into that camp disappears, which is horrible. Especially at that very last second. Again, Luke Michaels came into the limelight from promotion, saying just take the fight at 84 kilos and so on. The thing is, for me, he had already taken that fight at a higher weight class, just to get a fight in. There was a lot said and done before that fight actually got to the weigh-ins. It got quite personal, and then for your opponent to miss weight by such a drastic margin, not to say that Luke couldn't compete at 84 kilos. He's a big chap, but does it make sense for his career? I don't think so. And to come under scrutiny again for career-based decisions is quite harsh in my opinion. And again, another incident. I'm not 100% sure it was handled correctly, but it is what it is, and it's done now, and we move on. We obviously got to see some great fights on the main card. In between that, guys got promoted up the card. Jikasa had a great quick submission, and then we got to see Justin Smith back in action against Giovanni Pretorius, also back in action. It was a cracking fight, great stand-up fight. I'm sure the fans there loved it. I don't know, the fans watching on TV definitely loved it from what I saw. Good to see Tumisang Madiba back in action there. Really looked good. Nice to see Faiz Jacobs showed a lot of composure, showed he's grown up quite a bit, he's understanding his duty as an MMA fighter, and he had a lot more BMT, it seemed. Unfortunately, they had a bit of a spat at the press conference, but hopefully that gets squashed and sorted out. And then the fight of the night, which was Kilian Drotsky versus Junaid Ebanks. Great show, great fight. Two guys really put it all on the line and left everything in the cage, and hats off to them, and they definitely deserved that fight of the night. And then was the main event, is the one everybody's talking about, Martin van Staden versus Dave Mazzani. And this is where I really want to focus and really take a look and break it down and give my opinion on the way I saw it, and try and make sense of everything. What I do want to do is just go over the unified rules with everybody, and to do that I've got a video from Big John McCarthy that I think explains everything best, better than I could explain it. So here's the video, so enjoy.
First things first, there's only two elements that we want you to judge off of as far as your initial judging of the fight. That is striking and grappling. Those are the two elements that make a fight. If we don't have two fighters that are either striking or grappling, we got one looking aggressive or one trying to get position in the cage, that's dancing, it's not fighting. There's only two elements that are the fight: the striking of the fight, the grappling in the fight. That's what we're looking at. That's what we want you to judge the effectiveness of who is the better at either one of those two elements. Obviously, if 90% of the round is striking, we want you to go with a heavy emphasis on the striking. If 90% of the round was on the ground with grappling, the heavier emphasis goes with the grappling. Who is doing the most to impact the fight and to bring a fight to the end? That's what we're looking for. A lot of people are going to look and say it's damage. We can say it's impact damage. We're looking at the word of impact as our most important element in you giving credit in the fight. When we look at punches and we're looking at blows, we have to make sure that we understand what are the heavier blows. Shoulder strikes compared to punches don't count. Shoulder strikes are not as good as the punches. Elbows are going to be heavy strikes. Knees are going to be heavier than the elbows. Kicks are going to be on top of that. Same thing with the knees, very heavy. We want you to look at what is the heavy elements landing and have power. We're looking for power that has a big impact on the fighter. This is not a game of numbers. If you are starting to give more credit to numbers over quality, we're making a mistake. If we have one fighter that's landed 6 jabs, and we've got another fighter that's landed one beautiful right cross that hurt his opponent, that person with that one right cross is winning our fight. We want you to go off of who is doing the most to impact the end of this fight. Who is doing the things that is going to end this fight? That's what you're giving credit for. When it comes to the ground, same thing. We're going, who's going after submissions? Who is putting his opponent in dangerous positions where they have to defend to get themselves out? When we're looking at all of these elements, that's what's going to lead us into who is winning the fight. If we have one that we say, you know what, our striking and our grappling are just so close that I can't tell the difference between who's winning the round, now we're going to step ourselves down, and the first element we go to is, who was the fighter that was the most aggressive in the fight? Who was the fighter that was trying to be offensive? Who was the fighter that was trying to actually force the fight? That's your first element to go to. If you can't, off of that, say, I know who the winner of my round is, now you'll bring in ring or cage control. If you can't go off of ring or cage control and it's all even, you're going to have a 10-10 round. If you can separate those and say, you know what, off of this, I can say my striking and grappling were even, but my aggressive fighter was in the blue corner, he wins the round 10-9. That's how we want you to start looking at things.
So that's what Big John had to say. Obviously some crucial points there in the new unified rules. They discussed the two most distinguishing factors is obviously effective striking and effective grappling. And the next big thing is that if those two are equal, we look at aggression, control, roughly who's kind of pushing the pace. And yeah, so when we look at those things, the impact and so on, and try and apply that to to this fight with Dave Mazzani and Martin van Staden. And just try and consider the facts round by round, and that's what I want to do. I want to try to go through everything round by round and just see if I can try and explain the way I saw the fight. There's obviously a lot of varying differences between people in how they saw it, and obviously if you're on Team van Staden, you think he won. If you're on Team Mazzani, you believe he won, and that's the way it is. But I'm just going to give my opinion and kind of guide you through how I scored that. So in the first round, we obviously Dave Mazzani's game plan. He comes out quite strongly, manages to clinch. I think he gets a couple of takedowns at double leg here and there. And I think in the first round, I don't think there's too much contention about what's happening there and who won that round. It quite clearly was Dave Mazzani's round. You know, he dominated that round quite nicely. Martin did have small moments in that opening round, but it seemed he was a bit slow to get started and so on. But I don't think anyone's really arguing the fact that Dave Mazzani took that round and took it quite comfortably. So my score after the first round was quite clearly 10-9 to Dave Mazzani. There wasn't too much else in it. It was just quite easily to see that was his round. When we move on to round 2, I think the same can be said for that round in favor of Martin van Staden. I think clearly he won that round. You know, he was more aggressive. He pushed the pace a little bit more. He had a few stand-up exchanges, and at the end he actually wobbles Dave. I think he might actually wobble Dave twice in that round, but definitely towards the end of that round he definitely wobbled him. And yeah, I think quite clearly, and most people will agree that it was 1-1 apiece after the first 2 rounds. You know, Martin comfortably took that round. I would say 10-9 for Martin. There obviously were moments in that round where Dave had a bit of control and a bit of clinch, but yeah, for me it was quite clearly cut that was Martin van Staden's round, and again I think most people will agree with me there. The next 2 rounds, round 3 and 4, is where things really get interesting, and I think this is where the fight is won or lost. And I think most people, depending on how you saw these 2 rounds, will affect the way you saw or who you thought was the winner here. Round 3 starts with Martin comes out quite strong. He throws a couple of spinning back kicks to the body. I think one lands quite nicely, one doesn't. There's a couple of exchanges. Martin manages to catch Dave with a couple of combos, like a 1-2, I think maybe a right hand left hook, something like that. You know, some good hard shots land for him. Dave has a small moment. He like in a dirty boxing sort of distance, he lands a right uppercut and a right hand followed up, which was a nice combo. And the opening minute is a good stand-up exchange, and Martin definitely lands some seriously significant shots in that. Dave lands those 2 I discussed, but not much more than that. Maybe a leg kick if I remember correctly. And in about there's probably about 3 minutes 50 to go, or let's say 4 minutes to go. Dave manages to get Martin to the fence and gets him down. And it's at this moment where his corner starts to, you know, obviously comment about him grabbing the fence and argue with that. And yes, they were right. There was a lot of fence grabbing going on. You know, that situation goes to the ground. Dave has a weird position. It's like a 50-50 kind of position. You know, he's landing small shots to the thigh. Martin lands a couple of elbows here and there. So they're both landing, can I say, non-significant strikes in that situation, and it stays there for a little while. With Martin obviously against the fence, he manages to get back up. I think Dave gets another short double leg in there. Again, doesn't do anything with that position. He kind of just holds that position, and eventually Martin gets up. I think he throws something, maybe like a right hand or a short elbow, and that's when the referee steps in and stops the action and deducts a point. Which, look, I'm not disagreeing with the point deduction. I just thought the time of it was pretty weird, you know. Like, obviously he waited for a break, that there was no real dominant position. It just seemed like a weird time to stop a fight for the points. But just before that, in the clinch, obviously there's a bit of clinch work that Martin also manages to turn around and do a bit of work, so they both have the small moments there in the clinch. And then the last minute after the point deduction is a stand-up exchange again. So just to kind of sum that up, that round, and I think this is very important, and obviously depending on how you saw this round will really depict how you saw the final result. So if you take it by the numbers, first minute of the fight is a stand-up exchange. Martin's clearly winning that. Okay, then you've got 2 minutes of a kind of grappling scenario. Nothing really too effective. It's very much Mazzani's game plan is very much hold and stall. You know what I mean? He's not improving. He's not inflicting damage. He's not threatening submissions. None of that is really happening. So it's quite an even scenario when it comes to that. So the stand-up versus the grappling is quite even. And you can also say the last minute is again a stand-up exchange, and I think Martin maybe gets off a few better shots. So you got 2 minutes apiece with a kind of minute of 50-50 positions in between, which is up to you to decide. And then you've got to kind of say, okay, look, this is in my opinion the striking and the grappling is pretty even here. Okay, so who's been the more aggressive fighter in the round? Who's looked to finish? Who looked a little bit more dangerous? And for me, that was Martin. But then we've got to consider the point deduction, which takes us to a 9-9, in my opinion. Some people would have had it for Dave, which would have made it a 10-8, and I suppose there is argument for that. But just consider the fact who was causing more damage and who looked to be more effective in that round. And when it was even, who was more aggressive, who looked to finish the fight more. I think that's an important detail. And so for me, that round kind of settles on a 9-9 with the point deduction. That's the way I saw it. So you got 1 round apiece, an even round in the third, and we move into the fourth. The fourth round starts similarly on the feet. I think Martin comes out quite aggressive there. He lands something. He seemed to have rocked Dave, which forces him to change a level. Martin then sprawls. It's kind of like a 50-50 kind of scenario. There's a bit of clinch work back and forth between the two, and this kind of continues. And then 3 minutes, I think for 3 minutes of that round, they're kind of on the feet, but there's nothing massively significant happening in that stand-up exchange. I can't say hands down Martin was winning that exchange, Dave was winning that exchange. Martin was definitely front and center, pushing the pace, pushing Dave backwards. It does also seem like, and I know Dave is backpedaling, trying to measure that distance for the shot. That's kind of his plan, but it doesn't look good. He's kind of like ducking jabs and trying to stay clear. Martin's throwing a couple of kicks up the middle, but Dave is really backpedaling and got his back against the cage and that sort of thing. And in a judge's mind, if you're watching that, he's not really pushing anything. He's not really throwing anything. But again, it's a lot of jabs from Martin, a couple of 1-2s here and there. He does manage to land a couple of good shots in that. And if you really had to look at that 3 minutes of stand-up exchange, it's about 3 minutes. Don't quote me on it exactly. I'm trying to remember everything. About 3 minutes of stand-up, I would definitely say Martin is winning those exchanges, not by massive margins, but he's definitely winning those exchanges. But it's a weird round. It's kind of a round where I guess both guys have kind of considered the fact that there will be a fifth. Just kind of resting up a bit, doing what they need to do, and kind of save their energy for the penultimate round. There's a couple of details in there. The stand-up we spoke about, the sprawl from Martin early on in the round. The way he's pushing Dave back, Dave's obviously trying to measure to close the distance. I think Dave lands a very good leg kick in that round, and then eventually he does close the distance, and he goes back to that same system, that high crotch, kind of single leg, when he initially gets it, I think Martin kind of sprawls it, and there's eventually the way it gets down to the ground. If I remember, Martin tries to kind of sit through on something, and that's how it gets to the ground. And then Dave goes back to a position where he kind of secures one leg in that sort of like a leg triangle position in the leg, so he's locking one leg down. But here he's not really landing anything. He's throwing like hammer fists to the thigh and that sort of thing. And Martin also throws a couple of short shots in there. And a very important moment for me here is that Dave's position becomes so stagnant that he actually gets a warning from the ref to improve his position, otherwise he's going to stand him up. And that speaks volumes for me for that round. So again, it's a very difficult one how you see it. And in the last bit of that round, I know they do get up. There's a bit of a scramble. Like they clinch again, and both guys have small little moments in the clinch. So again, quite a tough round. My problem here in this round is I don't know how people are giving Dave Mazzani that round. It's extremely strange. I honestly don't know how Mazzani is winning that round. He does not do enough. If you can say in the first 3 minutes he's winning the stand-up exchanges, there's no chance. He has even if you want to say that he has control for about probably 50 seconds to a minute. The rest is all kind of Martin van Staden. But for the sake of being as objective as possible, let's say that the round was completely even. Martin was definitely pressing more. Dave had his back against the cage. He was backpedaling. He was definitely not the more aggressive fighter. But let's say, I think at best case, being most liberal and most objective you can with that round, you'll give that round a 10-10, an even round. I don't agree with that. I think Martin was winning that round, but for the sake of being as objective as possible, let's give it a 10-10. So now we're going into the fifth. We've got a round apiece and 2 draws with the point loss. Okay, so in the fifth round, and this was the way I kind of saw it, regardless of how you saw the third and the fourth, I kind of felt there was leeway and argument for both sides, and definitely the fifth round was where the fight was up for grabs, and I think the person who won that round would win that fight. It was a tightly contested match, but I think the fifth round speaks volumes. And I think if you want to kind of see what I'm saying, go back and watch the third and kind of see the time spent in each area, and the same for the fourth, who was really dominating. Look at the beginning when Martin kind of goes, has a kind of top position. Dave's sort of almost in a turtle. He lands a lot of good shots in there, significant blows. He's causing a lot of impact. He's causing the bigger impact, if I can put it that way, like John McCarthy was saying. And definitely, I think going into the fifth, this is where we're going to decide the fight. Everything was up for grabs, and that's the way it was. That's the way I saw it. And without a shadow of a doubt in my mind, Martin van Staden won that round. He came out, he pressed, he was looking for the knockout. Regardless of what it was, he obviously had a fear of going to the judges, and he thought he would accelerate. He really tried to push the pace. He had some good exchanges, and I don't think too many people are contending the fact that he won the fifth round. In that round, it goes to the ground. He gets he tries to put on the rear naked choke, so he's making Dave defend. He's landed good impact. Right at the end, it's almost like a DAS kind of choke he tries to set up. He had Dave in big amounts of trouble in the opening 30 seconds of the fight. He landed a great combination, had Dave backpedaling. He definitely looked rocked again to me here. Dave again gets that kind of like that leg locked down and just kind of stagnates in the position. He's not threatening any submissions. He's not throwing up any damage. He's really just biding his time, And I think here he was rocked, and that's why he was doing it. That's the way I see it. Whether he was or wasn't, I don't know. I can't say. That's the way I saw it. So for me, without a shadow of a doubt, Martin van Staden won that round, which, according to the way I've scored it, you've got a 10-9 in the first for Dave Mazzani, a 10-9 in the second for Martin van Staden. I saw Martin van Staden winning the third, but he had the point deduction, so we had a 9-9, and being as liberal as possible in the fourth, we're giving it a 10-10. So you got a round apiece and two rounds tied up, and the fifth round is Martin van Staden. That's the way I saw it. Obviously, there's argument for both sides in most rounds, barring the first and the second, and I think the fifth. I think the third and fourth is really where the fight is won or lost, and that's where people are contending. But we have to remember a couple of things. You have to score each round individually. You don't look at the overall fight. You're going round by round. And in each round that Dave Mazzani won, did he do enough to beat the champion? Did he do enough to win the belt? My opinion is definitely not. I don't feel like he did. But that's the way I see it. I think Martin van Staden should have kept his belt in that fight. It was a very, very, very tight fight. It was a tough decision for the judges. The judges had a tough task, and I think the first two obviously got it quite right, 3-2 apiece, depending on how you saw certain rounds. And then there was a one judge for me that 49-45. He wasn't even. I don't even think he was in the same building You know, it was a bit of a disgraceful call, and I know people have tried to justify how he got to those scores. I just don't see it, man. I don't know how he got to that score. And this is the thing with the judges, man. We've seen so many of these strange calls, even in the Andrew van Zyl fight. I mean, Andrew van Zyl didn't win, but someone had him winning 4 rounds or something crazy like that. And yeah, man, the judges, I think they need to start to hold themselves accountable. There's so much at stake for these guys, you know. There's obviously financial consequences. You know, if you win, you get X amount of money. So if you're losing out financially, maybe your career, maybe there was another big organization waiting for you for one more win. Maybe Martin van Staden was about to go 5-0 as a lightweight. Maybe there was another organization, you know, maybe more financial opportunities for him. You know, and I know people say, oh, don't leave it in the judges' hands, but then what is the point of having judges? Judges are there for an option to end a fight. You know, there's a couple of ways to win a fight, and by decision is one of them. So judges need to get these things right, and that's just the way it is, man. So yeah, that's the way I saw it. I definitely feel Martin van Staden deserved to win that fight. But all credit to Dave Mazzani. He fought his fight and he did it well. He had a plan and he executed. So congratulations to him. A lot of people calling for the instant rematch. Let's see what happens. Yeah, man, and that's the way I saw it. So if you've got different ideas, I'll try my best to, you know, debate and interact with everybody. That's the way I saw the fight, round by round, and yeah, I think it was the wrong decision, and that's what I have to say. So thank you for listening, and we'll chat to you soon. Ciao.